So I was working on a podcast earlier. I was talking about how I require a 90-day minimum if you're going to send a horse to me to be started under saddle or has had less than 90 days under saddle already, that I have a 90-day minimum. And I go into the podcast explaining why that is a requirement of mine, my policies, and my thought process behind it. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to make a video talking about groundwork, because groundwork is a huge part on starting colts, and a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings on what you need to be doing with your horses to actually prepare them to be started under saddle. I am not a colt starter by any means. I'll tell you guys that. I will start a colt, and I enjoy starting colts, but I am not a colt starter. I'm not selling to get on a horse and ride the rough off of them until they stop bucking and ride a nasty colt for 30 days and send you back a horse that's not going to buck anymore because it's exhausted. I'm not a colt starter, but I am a firm believer in setting your horses up for success, and you guys know that. And a majority of the horses that I have been sent over the years when it comes to starting colts under saddle, every single person that has sent me a horse says that this horse is ready to be started under saddle, that this horse, yeah, everything's done. Like, you can do anything you want on that horse. That horse has had the giant teddy bear, has drugged the tarps, has gone through the pool noodles. I mean, I guarantee you, most of those horses that I have gotten on and put first rides on, I could probably get and sit on them and shoot a gun off of their back, because these horses have been worked with. But the misconception that people have when it comes to groundwork with your horses is that you need to desensitize them to where they're not going to have a violent reaction to things anymore, which is fantastic. I like that I can get on your guys' horses and they're not going to explode. But very few people in this world would I trust that they said that this horse is ready. They'd say, Sarah, I got this horse. I've done all the groundwork. All I need you to do is put 30 days, as many rides as you can on 30 days. And I would go out and work with that horse maybe an hour max on the ground, just seeing how that horse thinks and processes things. And then I'd probably get on that horse's back and go to putting 30 days of rides on with no groundwork besides the 30 minutes or so. That's a handful of people in this world that I would trust. And the misconception that comes with groundwork from a majority of people is the whole desensitizing horses. It is overthought, it is overdone, and it does not matter if you desensitize that horse to everything in the world. You could get on that horse's back and shoot a gun off of it for the first time and it's not going to react. If you have no control of that horse, none of it's going to matter. None of it matters. I'm telling you right now that I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on people's colts through the years that they've said, even they have ridden a handful of times already, never bucked, never had violent reactions, just ready to put miles on. And you get on that horse and you ask him to stop, and guess what? You're going 20 yards before that horse stops. It's like pulling on a brick wall. You ask that horse to turn, and they have noodle neck. And what that horse does is when you ask that horse to turn, they do this. And now that horse is not turning. They're going in a straight line with their head facing their hind end. They're going blind. I have been in instances where I've been out on rides with people and everybody decides, they put me on the colt because I'm the trainer. And yeah, you can ride the green horse. I'm confident you can ride the green horse. Everybody takes off at a lope on a straightaway. And that colt goes to take off. And they don't know how to rate themselves. And they just keep gaining speed and gaining speed. And I'm trying to get that horse's attention, and I'm going like this, and I'm bumping, and that horse is just gaining more speed, more speed, more speed. And I've pulled on that horse sight to do a run, rein, stop, and that horse has turned their head. Now their head's facing their hind end. They noodle-necked out because that horse was overflexed. It had no control of its body. And so now this horse was running at a dead run blind with its head facing the opposite direction. And I got to tell you, that is the most scary out of all the colt starting stories that I have of wrecks and things that have happened and stuff like that through the 16 years of training horses. That story right there of that colt running blind with a noodle neck, no stop and no turn, was the scariest moment in my entire life. training horses. I've ridden saddlebreds that flip over backwards on you. I've ridden saddlebreds where the bridle has fallen apart and I have no control of that horse in an arena and they're running just no control. The scariest moment of my life was right then and there when that colt was running blind, turned his head, and was still running in a straight line because there's no control. You don't get in your vehicle, you don't buy a brand new vehicle off the lot and drive it to work and say, oh, well, it just doesn't know how to use the brakes yet, but we'll figure it out as we drive to work. It's dangerous to get in that vehicle if it has no brakes. You don't get in a vehicle and go, oh, well, we're still working on turning left today. It's kind of funky about that, but we're still going to drive to work. It is dangerous. Just because that vehicle, you're not going to get in that vehicle just because the engine's not going to explode on you and kill you. No, the engine's not going to explode, but it doesn't stop. We don't have brakes yet. We're still working on that. I wouldn't get in that vehicle and drive it anywhere until I got those brakes fixed. And you should have the same mindset when it comes to your horses. If I can't get on the back of your horse and have turn, stop, and go controlled, then I ain't getting on the back of your horse, and you shouldn't be either. You should be doing enough groundwork with your horses to where you can control them, and all of that transfers to their back. And I get a lot of people that get mad at me for saying that, I'm sorry, if you send your horse to me, I'm doing 30 days groundwork on it. And they say, this horse is ready to go. Like, why? And I ask them, can I control that horse's shoulders? Can I move its feet independently? Can I control the horse's hind end and disengage it? Can I control that horse's feet, hind end, rib cage, neck, and shoulders, all independently from the ground? If I get on that horse and that horse is tense for the first time, am I going to be able to put my leg into it and be able to move that hind end over like this and get it to loosen up? If I can't get that horse to step forward because they're confused, can I move and put pressure into it and have that horse move its shoulders over and go, oh, and then step out confidently? If I can't do that, I'm not getting on your horse. If your horse, I go to get on it and it squirts out, if I can't pull it into myself and stop it, I'm not getting on that horse. If I can't stop that horse from the ground, I'm not getting on its back. Why would I get on its back? Put myself and that horse in danger. So I thought I'd show you guys a couple of the things that I look for and that I work on with my horses when it comes to groundwork. Because what you do on the ground will transfer to the saddle. And when you transfer it to the saddle, then you basically get on and just start refining stuff on that horse. You're not doing a bunch of, dinking around and stuff on that horse. You don't need a ton of equipment desensitizing that horse. A lot of people ask me, what do you use to desensitize your horses, Sarah? This and this. Sometimes I'll bring my rope out, rope a horse. When I put my saddle pad on and saddle on it, I'm desensitizing them then. But other than that, that's what I use. That's all I use to desensitize my horses. I don't have all these, different things. And a lot of the great trainers out there, if you watch their videos and you follow their stuff, there's not many really great horsemen out there that use a bunch of different things to desensitize a horse because they realize that it's not desensitizing a horse that's preparing them for the world. What prepares a horse is training that horse to be able to be in control. Because it doesn't matter what type of situation you're in, if you don't have any control of that horse, you have no safety. You have put yourself in a life or death situation. And that's your fault. You can sit there and prep them with anything in the world, but if you have zero control of that horse, you should not be getting on that horse's back. So, a couple of things that I'm looking for with my horses when I'm working with them on the ground, preparing them to be started under saddle. Like I said, I want to be able to control a horse's hind end. I want to be able to control their ribs. Cricket. Shoulders, neck, head, control their feet. And you can tell here, Cricket's been one of our go-to ranch horses for a long time. And you can see she's like, whoa, what's going on with this flag? We probably should have spent a little more time with the flag. She's a goosey horse and she's not very confident in herself, and you could see that right here. But you can also see that she's not losing her mind over it too. She's just going, what is that? So some of the things that I'm looking for with groundwork is I want to be able to walk towards my horse's hind end here and see I'm not pulling on her. I'm just kind of tipping her nose in and putting pressure here, and we got a disengagement of that hind end. It is crossing over. That right there is a big thing for a horse like Cricket here. I've talked in videos with her before, riding her, showing that she just kind of shuts down and her feet get sticky. This right here, if I were to get on this horse and she were green and her feet get sticky, asking her to move these feet like this right here could be the difference between your horse blowing up or your horse going, oh, okay, and then stepping out confidently. Other things that I look for in my horses is I want, let's see here, we're going to have to work on this for a second. Control of those shoulders to where there, see how she's stepping over and moving those shoulders when I ask her to turn, moving out. I want to be able to move that horse out and move those shoulders. Control of those shoulders, each part of that horse's body, like that. So she's not coming into my space or anything like that. That's something when I get on a colt for the first time and I ask for forward movement on a colt, I don't kick them and try to get them to go forward. What I do is I set that horse up and have them disengage those shoulders. And what I'll do is I'll have them turn like that. And then once I have them turn like that, where they cross over in the front end like that, then they step out confidently. And you're not sitting there waylaying on that horse's sides, doling up their sides right away. You just ask, and that horse moves, and then they step out, and you don't have a fight. Other things that I'm looking for, hey, with a horse for ground is, see right there we go. I want light and responsiveness. I want that horse to know, hey, when I put pressure here, I want you to back up away from it. I don't have to rip and ream on her face. Right there, she's kind of getting doled away, but I want her to back to pressure. So when I get on that horse and ask them to back for the first time, they're going to go, oh. And I'm not going to have to sit there and back up. And then that horse is going to go like this and then let go. All you're going to do is go, hey, back. And that horse is going to back up. That's control. Teaching them control from the ground. Back. Just like that. I want this horse, when I tip that nose, I'm not pulling this horse around when I'm asking him to turn. All I have to do is kind of bump it, and I could turn that horse's nose either direction. I could sit here and I could go like this and bump that horse back up. I can go like this, bump that horse, tip their nose in any direction without pulling on them. I don't want to do this with my horse. I want to be able to go like that. Bump that horse, and that horse tips their nose. Other things that I look for, that I kind of work on with these horses, and we kind of have to go through some refreshers with Cricket because it's been 4 years since we've done any groundwork with her, is getting them to understand to give to pressure away from you, because a lot of horses learn not just to, they don't learn to give to pressure, and they're not truly halter broke. They actually just know how to follow you around. So this is one of my favorite exercises, working from the ground, but not just getting them to flex away from you and not panic about it, but also turn away from you and not panic about it either. I want them to understand that they need to give to that pressure and follow where I'm directing them versus following me. And right here, when I get a client horse in, this is something that I do right away, especially with the ones that are pretty broke and ready to start immediately. This will tell me right away what kind of work that person has done with that horse. Not only can that horse flex, but can they follow through and move those shoulders? You could see Cricket, she doesn't just turn, but she kind of, and noodle neck around, her whole body bends. Let's see here. Watch her whole body here when she goes to turn around. Now, see, if this was her first reaction and this is all I could get out of her, I would assume that she hasn't been taught to follow her nose and not noodle neck around or bend her body. So, here, let's do this. But you notice how she bends her whole body around when she does that? When she turns around, she doesn't just, a lot of horses with people who have, overflexed their horses, it's a very common issue. What will happen is that horse will turn and they'll collapse their neck and their shoulder, and then they'll swing that hind end around instead of doing like Cricket is and bending around the turn. That's showing control of the entire body, not just the nose. She's not collapsing at the neck. She's bending her whole body. See here, she's a little bit confused, and that's all right. Ooh. So we're just going to kind of do this, keep her from turning. Like I said, this has been quite a few years since Cricket's done anything like this. We're going to get her. See right there, she collapsed her neck. She's going to swing that hind end around. That's not control of the body. That's exactly what I was talking about. Versus the turn on this side, when I asked her to turn, you could see a complete difference. When I ask her to turn over here, she kind of swings her butt around a little bit, but then she bends her whole body and comes through the turn. That's something that I'm looking for. So on this side, when I do it, I know, sweetie, here. We got a little bit of confusion on this side. And so we need to work on bending, there we go, bending that body through. And there's some exercises that I work on with this horse, to get a little more bend and a little more give with that body, to show more control of the body versus overflexation to one side, collapse, swinging that hind end around, getting her to move her shoulders and get those shoulders engaged. So there's other exercises that I work on with groundwork. Come on. Come on. She doesn't need the trot. I just want her to go out. There we go. Just like this. Now, I want to work on when I'm lunging this horse, where I can push on her hip here. There we go. We got her to cross her hips, disengage that hind end. A lot of horses that people, when they lunge them, come on, there. No, she's being a good example here. Come on. There we go. A lot of horses, when you go to lunge them, when you get a horse from a client that has desensitized and lunged this horse 8 million times, when you approach that horse's hip, they're not gonna move that hip like that. Like this. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want her to speed up. I didn't ask her to speed up by approaching that hip. I asked her to disengage that hip. Just like that. And a lot of these horses that people lunge and desensitize will teach their horse, I put pressure on you, you go faster. No, I'm putting pressure on this hip. And I want this hip. There we go, just like that. I want that hip disengaged. All right, go out. Go out. And like I said, she's in needing of a refresher of groundwork. It's been 4 or 5 years since this horse has had any groundwork done on her. She's been cowboyed off of for a long time. So the next step that I would go to, she likes to anticipate too. Checking these horses out for groundwork, seeing if they're ready to be started under saddle, is adding an extra step into this. Come on, get out there. Get out there. There we go. So I'm going to step in. Give me that hip. Give me that hip. There we go. Give me those shoulders. There we go. Go off this way. Get off of me. Get off of me. She's kind of crowdy, so I'm getting her off of me. All right, step in. Give me, see this side? This is kind of a problem side for her. Give me that hip, hip, hip. Shoulders. There we go. This shows that this horse, I have control of her feet, her hind end, her ribs, her shoulders, her head, because I can tip that nose and she'll kind of put her hip out and stuff like that, but she's not going to collapse underneath herself. Come on. Come on. There we go. She doesn't collapse underneath herself when I ask her to tip that nose. She doesn't drop that shoulder down. So, ask for that hip, shoulders. There we go. Get off of me. Get off of me. And we're going to ask again. Ask for that hip, shoulder. And if she comes into my space like that, I go into her space and make her mind me. This is something that I work on a lot with colts, just getting, and it takes a lot of work to get to this point. She came into my space there, so I got after her pretty good. Get off of me. This is stuff that I work with a lot with colts, and Cricket's had a little bit of groundwork. We've gone to a couple clinics with her and stuff like that, and I've started working with her since we got back. So she's gotten a little bit better. She definitely needs a refresher on these things. As for that hip, there we go. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And it takes some work with, especially a horse that has been desensitized a lot. Good girl. Desensitized a lot. It takes a lot of work to get to that point, because what happens with a horse that you have over desensitized, when they come into your space and you say, get out, they've been taught not to react to that. And so they stand there and go like this. And you really have to be like, get off of me before they get the point, and you have to really reward them. So when you're sitting there going, get off, hey, and then reward it, then that horse learns. It takes a lot more to teach a horse to get out of your space and get control of those. Because first you have to teach a horse to get out of your space and move off of you, because they've never been taught control. So you get after them. Hey, get off. There. Like that. And you have to reward that and do that 150 times before you can get to the... And now we're getting control of those shoulders, and those shoulders are moving over. You have to work a lot harder, because a horse has been taught to stand there and take it, don't react. You have to get past that before you can go, all right, let's get into the controlling those shoulders. Move those shoulders. All right, sweet. And then you have to break it down into, when you start moving those shoulders, you do things like, okay, good girl. That's it. Okay, let's move them shoulders. Okay, good girl. That's it. You know, you break things down. It's the same thing with the hind end. She's not even going to let me get back there to show you guys. She's already moving off of it. But it's the same thing with the hind end. These horses have been taught to stand, let me flag you, let me throw a rope all over you, let me put the noodle all over your butt. Stand there and take it. Stand there and take it. Stand there and take it. So then when you go to try to get control of these things like the hip, these horses have been taught nothing but stand and take, don't react. And so you have to go through a whole process of undoing, desensitizing to these horses because they have been taught nothing but stand there and tolerate, stand and tolerate, stand and tolerate. So you have to go through this whole process of move your feet, move, whap, whap, move your feet, move, whap, whap, move your feet. Okay, now we're getting control. And these are the things that when you're working with these horses are really key and crucial when you go to get on their back, getting control of their feet. The other thing that I do with my horses when lunging them is I want this horse to understand what these things mean. So when I do this, I want her to stop. Okay, that's the first step. She needs to stop to this. When I ask her to, she needs to back to this when I ask her to. Next step, gaining control of that horse, is when I ask that horse to stop, are they stopping teed off to me? Ooh, no, she's not stopping teed off. Move those shoulders. Stay right there. You can look at me, but you need to stay teed off. All right, let's stop. Let's stop teed off. She's bringing him in. Stay that way. Ooh. Hey, stay teed off. Ooh. Ooh. And this is something you can see here. It's something we need to work at. Stay teed off. Ooh. There we go. It's not the best, but we'll take that. That's progress. Eventually, when I ask her to stop, I don't want her to turn and face into me. She can look at me, that's fine. But I want to be able to stop to where this horse is teed off just like this at a stop. And then when I ask her to back, she's going to back. But she's going to back teed off to me. And then I'm going to do this. And she's going to move those shoulders out, not come into my bubble. And I'm going to have control of this horse. Ooh. See, we're going to work a little bit here on this. We're going to get control of these shoulders and where this horse stops. There we go. Perfect. We're going to just let her go and reward her right there. That's exactly what I was looking for. Good girl. We're going to ask her to walk forward. We're going to ask her to woo. Stay teed off. Good girl. We're going to ask you to back. Back. It's not teed off, but it's a start. We're asked for the shoulders. Get those shoulders around, stay out of my space. Now we go. I have a video talking about what I'm looking for my horses, teaching them to properly lunge. This is the foundation to getting this horse to properly lunge. This isn't lunging. Right here. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going. This is bullying and pushing your horse around for no reason. And then you go, change directions, change directions, change directions, change directions. Go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way. Change directions, change directions, change your... That's not lunging. That's not lunging a horse. That's just jerking and pulling your horse around. Lunging a horse is having control of that horse's body. I know, sweetie, I'm sorry. I got weird. And being able to go. All right. Let's move them hips. Move them hips out. Teeter them hips out. There we go. Sweet. All right, now stop. Stop, teetered off. Ooh. Ooh. I wanted you to stop. All right, now let's back. Back. There we go. Move back. Shoulders. Give me your shoulders. Stay out of my space. This is the foundation of lunging right here. So when I am with this horse, asking her to go around me, she's not pulling on the rope. The rope's not dragging in the ground. She goes out where I put her on the end of that line, whether it's the very end of the line and it's not dragging on the ground. If I put my horse here, they're going to stay there. If I bring my horse in, they're going to come in and not drag on that rope and pull me around. When I ask that horse to stop, they're going to stop teed off. When I ask that horse to back, they're going to back. When I ask for that horse's shoulders, they're going to give their shoulders, and they're all going to do that at the end of the line without me getting in their space, without them dragging me around. From right here, I should be able to go frame this horse with my body wherever I put pressure. And so from here, I could say, actually, kick that hip out. Kick that hip out. You can see her crossing over in that hind end with her hip now. I have control of that hip from here just by walking towards it, saying, give me that, move that hip, move that hip. And you can see I'm not bumping on the lead rope or anything. I'm just applying pressure right there. I should be able to do that from the center. I should be able to go, all right, I want you to move them shoulders. Move them shoulders. Cross over. There we go. Perfect. That's being able to lunge your horse, having control of that body part. So these are the things that I'm looking for, that I'm working with. Just a handful of the things that I work with these horses. And when it comes to these horses that I've gotten from clients that have just been taught to stand and take it, with never been taught any aspect of control, just these handful of exercises with this horse can really change, can take a long time. Getting your horse to do stuff like this after it's been taught for 2 years of somebody saying, stand and tolerate this right here can take a long time to get a horse to give to those things, because you have to really break it down from, hey, move your shoulders over. You're sitting there asking them to move and they're not moving, and you go, hey, move your shoulders, and they move their shoulders, and you stop in your reward. You go, hey, move your shoulders over, hey, move your shoulders, and that horse moves their shoulders and they get a reward. And then pretty soon after that, after your horse gets the concept of, oh, when they put pressure, I move, then you reward that. So you spend a good, couple of days, good long sessions working with a horse, just getting them to where you could say, move your hips, and they move their hips, and then you have to reward every single little movement. And then you go, move your shoulders, and they go, okay, now we have to reward that. And then you build off of there, and then pretty soon you get a horse to where you can do stuff like this with, and get those shoulders moved over like this. And you can back that horse up, get him on that hind end, get him moving sideways, things like that, working with that horse, control of their body. And without stuff like that, I'm not getting on your horse. Because if I can't get on your horse and they go to walk off and I go, hey, let's not walk off, and that horse doesn't, oh, okay. If I go like this and that horse bears down on that, I'm not getting on that horse. If in order to turn your horse standing in front of it, like I said, I want to be able to do this and bump and have that horse respond. If I have to get your horse to turn their head and come out here from the ground, if I have to do this, your horse doesn't know how to give to pressure. You're just dragging your horse around. I want that horse to understand, bump, give. Bump, give. Okay, you give. Let's bump again, give more. I don't want to drag that horse around. And I ask that horse to back. I want to bump, bump, back. Bump, bump, back. Bump, bump, keep backing. Hold it up. If I have to sit there and do this and hold your horse to back, I'm not getting on it. If I can't get your horse to go around in a circle, and she's going to stop incorrectly here. She's going to turn and face me. But if I can't go from the ground, go, whoa, and that horse doesn't stop, I'm not getting on your horse. If I can't get your horse going in a circle, you get them out on the end of that lead without them dragging me around, not giving to that pressure, I'm not getting on your horse. And if your horse is doing any of these things, if you can't lunge your horse and go, let's trot. If you can't lunge your horse and do this, and that horse doesn't stop, and you can't stop that horse from the ground like that, you're not getting on that horse. There's no control. If you can't get your horse, give it shoulders, and there she start walking off, and all I had to do is look at this lead rope when she walks forward. You can't do this with your horse with their shoulders, and when that horse starts to walk forward, go, hey, without pulling on it, don't get on the horse. There's no control. You don't have control of that horse's shoulders. That horse won't turn for you. If you can't go from your hips, and that horse can't disengage their hind end and give you their hips, don't get on that horse. You don't have control of that horse's feet. If you can't throw this over and get that horse to turn and bend their whole body, don't get on that horse. If that horse goes and flips their hind end around and almost takes you out at the end of that rope, don't get on that horse. You noodle necked it, and that horse is collapsing. You don't have any control of that horse's shoulders. These are all things that I work with on top of more exercises as horses progress. But this is literally just the basics of groundwork for my horses. This is, and I'm telling you right now, this winter, this is what I'm working with my horses I'm going through. I'm doing a refresher on all of my horses on the basics of groundwork. All of these horses are rusty because I haven't done any groundwork on them for 4 or 5 years because we've been cowboying off them. We didn't have time to do it. And you don't want to work with your horse after they covered 30 miles a day and go and do more groundwork on them. And so now my horses, we're doing a refresher and we're going back and we're doing a refresher over things. We're also learning new things that I've learned in the past 4 or 5 years with groundwork that I go, you know, that I should have done that. Right now, Reba and I, we're going through ground driving, learning to ground drive because I never taught her how to ground drive. It's another thing that I do with all of my colts now is they all ground drive. I should be able to put that saddle on a horse, have a rein go through each stirrup, and be able to walk behind that horse, turn them, stop them, back them up, and get them to go without them collapsing underneath themselves, because a lot of people will ground drive their colts. But when they turn that colt, what happens, instead of that whole body turning and bending the ribs and their whole body, what happens when they turn that colt is they collapse the neck, that hind end swings around like that, and their whole body collapses, and there's no actual control. And when I ask that horse to turn one direction, I should be able to hey, bump, turn this way when I'm ground driving that horse. Or, hey, bump this way. And that horse is going to turn and hold a frame through it. When I ask that horse to stop when they're walking, all I'm going to do is bump, and that horse is going to stop. When I ask that horse to back up, all I'm going to do is bump, and that horse is going to back up, all from ground driving. These are all things that I work with my horses, and it's all extremely important. And if I can't do the basics of what I just showed you with cricket from the ground with your horse, getting control of the feet, the hind end, the ribs, the shoulders, the neck, and the head, I'm not getting on your horse. I'm not, because there's no control. It does not matter how much, it does not matter how much you sit there and expose your horses to stand and tolerate when it comes to desensitizing. You could spend 2 years, whatever, to where literally the first ride you get on that horse, you could probably sit on their back, shoot a gun off that horse's back, and they're going to stand there and they're not going to blow up. That's fantastic. But if you do not have control of that horse, of all of that horse's body, of the feet, the hind end, the ribs, the shoulders, the neck, and the head, your safety's out the window. You might as well be getting on a horse that was never desensitized. Because I could tell you right now, when that horse takes off at a lope with all the other horses and you're thinking everything's fine and dandy, this horse could tolerate anything, he's not going to buck me off. Well, guess what? When that horse is running Mach 10 and you're trying to stop it and you have no control, you're going to really, really wish that you installed brakes in that truck that you just got in. Just like I said, you're not going to get in a vehicle if there's no brakes or it doesn't turn. So why are you getting on the back of a 1,000-pound animal when it has no brakes and it doesn't turn and you have no control? That's my mindset. If I don't have control of this horse from the ground, if that horse is pulling you around on the ground, if you don't have control of all of that horse's body parts from the ground, you should not be getting on that horse's back. You should not be sending it to a colt starter. Some colt starters, like I said, that's the reason why, a major reason why I require 90-day minimum for someone to send a colt to me, is because when I get these horses, I cannot do any of this with them. They have been taught to stand and take it for years of their life. And when I try to get control of those things, they have only been taught to stand and take it. They've never been taught to respond. And so the first 30 days is teaching that horse that, hey, I have control of your feet. Let's get control of those feet. Let's do this. Let's move that. Let's move this. That's why I don't do 60 days. That's why I don't do 30 days. It's because the first 30 days is teaching a horse to not just stand there and take it anymore, but respond. Respond to me. Respond. Let me have control. Let me have control. That's the first 30 days working with a horse. And it's a lot of work when that horse has been just pounded into their head. Tolerate, 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 don't explode, tolerate, don't explode, tolerate, don't explode. It's a lot to go through to untrain the tolerance in a horse to get response. You don't want tolerance in a horse. You want response out of a horse. And it's your job to train a positive response into that horse. If they have a negative response, correct it. Tolerance is a negative response to me. If I were to walk up to a horse and I did this, and I'm going to do it lighter on her because she will respond. If I were to walk up to a horse and I were to pull on their halter and push back right here, and they just stood here like this, that's tolerance. I want response. I want a horse, when I do this, to respond. I don't want them to stand there and go. Tolerance is a negative response. You want a positive response of, okay, yes. And so stop teaching your horses to tolerate stuff and start teaching them control.